Welcome to another episode of the Bobcast. Today we have our tennis analyst Jag back with us. So Jag, the ATP Finals are set between Dominic Thiem and Daniil Medvedev. They've both beaten Nadal and Djokovic respectively, and a lot of people are starting to question whether the reign of the big three, Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, might be coming to an end. What are your thoughts on this situation?
Yeah, I think both Dominic Thiem and Medvedev played tremendously in the ATP Finals. I wouldn't go as far as to say that the end of the big three has come, that they're waning, right? Because they've still had strong performances this year. In the past, matches right now with the ATP Finals, Dominic Thiem played extraordinary tennis, but so did Djokovic, right? And it wasn't that, Djokovic played poorly or choked or anything like that. It was just Thiem had outplayed him then. And Djokovic could easily come back, next year. It was just, one performance. I wouldn't stress too much about that. And I think the same goes for Nadal. I think he just had a bad match. His shots weren't going in. And if you look at the, match statistics and you watch the match, a lot of points he lost was because he just wasn't getting his first serve in. And I think that's something that could be considered a fluke or something that could just be considered a bad game. I don't think that necessarily says the end of the big three is coming, despite Federer not playing in the ATP Finals. I will say, though, that, Thiem is playing a lot better than I've seen him. He was always a tremendous player. He's rivaled Nadal at Roland Garros, and I was really impressed with his performance. And the same goes for Medvedev. So I'm looking forward to what 2021 brings for both of these players. But I think it's a bit too soon to start to say that, this new generation, they're going to start taking over, despite this being a tremendous performance, both on Thiem's and Medvedev's end.
You've made a great point that it might be too early to say that the big three are done and that their era is already over. But could there be signs that are pointing to the ascension of a new era? Dominic Thiem, before 2019, was just 7-15 versus the big three. But since then, he's been 9-3, and he's the second player ever to have at least 5 wins against each of the big three, and the other one being Andy Murray. So there's some cracks that are beginning to show. Do you think that this is a trend that will continue in the future?
Well, first off, yeah, it's really impressive that Thiem joins Andy Murray as, I think you said 5 wins against members of the big three. Really great news. And I hope it does. I hope that eventually there's some cracks, because as a tennis fan, I want to see a new generation come and play tennis and bring it to a higher level. But also as a tennis fan, I have to realize that it hasn't panned out that way yet. I think you mentioned, what was the statistic you used? Since 2017, he's been 9-3, something like that.
Yeah, before 2019, he was just 7-15, 7 wins, 15 losses versus the big three. But since then, as you know, he's won a US Open, which is something that a lot of players haven't been able to do. And he's a spectacular 9 wins and only 3 losses against the big three since 2019. So is there this reversal in maybe the young players that are starting to gain a little bit more in the gap between them and the big three?
So I want to be clear here. It's young player, really just Thiem here. And even if we say since 2019, of the 7 Grand Slams that have been played, obviously the Wimbledon was canceled. 6 of them were won by the big three, specifically Djokovic and Nadal. Federer was not able to win one in either 2019 or 2020. But I also want to point out that, there were such rumors about Federer, right? A few years ago that, Federer was done and that he was not going to win a Grand Slam again. And those rumors lasted. And then in 2017, he came back and won, right? He won 2. And so there's still some precedent for this. There have been times in the past where people have questioned the big three, who have felt that their age was too high, that, injuries were going to hurt them, that they were slipping. But they've always bounced back, and they've always bounced back very effectively, winning Grand Slams. Specifically with Federer, Nadal has had his fair share of injuries as well. And so I think that, all three of them will bounce back in 2020. And when I say bounce back, this is not to say that they had a poor 2020 year whatsoever. I'm mainly speaking about just this ATP Finals. These latest losses, I think, are really strong for Thiem and Medvedev, but I don't think that necessarily shows that Nadal or Djokovic are fading. In fact, I think they're going to get even better next year.
That's a good point. And in fact, you could say that even in both of the wins today against Nadal and Djokovic, both Medvedev and Thiem had to come from behind to win. So maybe it
Yeah,
was
definitely.
just two slips. But if you had to pick, there's certainly this emergence of young talent within tennis
Mm-hmm.
with Medvedev, Thiem, Zverev. Who
Yeah.
do you think is going to be the next face of tennis in the future, or will it be a split with a new big three like we see right now?
So I'll say a couple of things to that. When we talk about the new face of tennis, we want to talk also about the timelines of this emergence, right? So when Nadal and Federer started becoming the face of tennis, they were beating the number one players like at age 19, at age 20, at age 21. They had already won Grand Slams, right? Very, very early in their careers, they were already dominant and they came in like very strong. And then they just dominated for 10, 15 years. Thiem is, I think, like 27, right? Amazing player, fantastic player. And there have always been rumors about, the new guys coming in. They're going to start taking the titles, right? There was a lot of hype around Kyrgios, who, unfortunately just didn't have the discipline to win a Grand Slam. I think that we want to be very careful about, the emergence or the face of tennis. The face of tennis for the next 5 years will still be the big three, despite if Thiem wins another title or wins a few titles. Even if Thiem wins 2 titles next year, right? I still think the face of tennis is the big three because they've showed that level of dominance for so many years. And when they came in, they did it at a very young age. But if you're asking me to choose between the younger, players who I think would be the best, face or the highest prospect of taking over that little mantle, I think it would be Thiem. And the reason being is because I saw that Thiem had really improved based on his, strategy when he was playing the ATP Finals. I think he's gotten a lot smarter player. He's always been very strong, and he's challenged, like I said earlier, Nadal at Roland Garros. That's very impressive. So I think he has the best chance. And then also, he's the only one of the younger players who actually has a Grand Slam under his belt. But, to be fair, the other ones still have a few years to catch up to Thiem. He's a few years older. So we'll see it play out. But I want to be very clear about the whole timeline situation that, they aren't really coming in and dominating. They've already been, in the ATP World Tour for several years, and they haven't found the success. Whereas Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer came into the ATP World Tour and immediately had success when they became professionals and started dominating very early on. I just don't think you can compare the two as the face of tennis.
Certainly a very good point and a very big prediction. Let us know in the comments below if you agree or disagree with Jag's take, and also let us know who you think will be the new face of tennis in the next 5 to 10 years. And with that being said, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for future updates, and we'll see you in the next video.
Podcast out.